We have did not begin streaming yet, because there's always that few seconds. In fact, surprisingly, Rumble is already streaming, but YouTube is a tiny bit behind. There we go. Okay, good. So right now, I'm thinking about doing something called Tech Thursdays, and on occasion Tech Support Thursday. If anybody ever wants to, like, do like a one-on-one stream where we work together on hashing out some kind of tech issue. For example, something involving OBS. And since this is the first time I'm running an air conditioner, for the better part of a day, or at least, while I'm in my room, I figured we'd touch upon audio filters because, generally speaking, I try to conserve energy with the air conditioning. I'll use it maybe if I'm trying to fall asleep, and I'll put it on a timer sometimes. I'll let it turn off automatically at a certain time, or I'll put the thermostat at like 74 or 76 degrees. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like to get a nice cold room, get it down to 68 degrees or whatever, but, you got to strike a balance. But anyway, today, it was 85 degrees outside, and so, the air conditioner had to work a little more hard, and I kept my computer off for most of the day, but I had to run a video encoder, and we're going to go and take a quick look at video encoding, because this is something that will, tax your air conditioner as much as your computer's resources. So as you can see right here, we have a program called Hybrid, and although the name is not really in the title bar, that is the name of this application. Hybrid is an alternative to Handbrake, which is a popular free video encoding application, which we'll jump into in a moment. Why I like Hybrid is because it does a better job with deinterlacing. But Handbrake is hands down the more user-friendly application, and 9 out of 10 times, or I don't know, I'm making up numbers here, it will do the job just about the same for what people are doing now. What would you use Hybrid for? Well, or Handbrake in this case for? Well, typically I would use Handbrake for Blu-ray. So if I have a Blu-ray movie, whether it's in a file or a folder, for example, I bought Galaxy Express 3.9 on Blu-ray, and in order to watch it, I want to put it on in my digital media library, because that enables me to watch it on any TV set in the house or on my phone. I don't share it. It's just something like a matter of convenience. I want the physical media, but I rather keep the physical media on my shelf as a hard copy backup, because things happen. Like you go to get the disc out. I'm sure you can develop technique at opening the disc, but one thing that happens is, well, you misplace the disc. Like, in fact, where is the disc right now? I think it's in my DVD drive. I'll have to check. But yeah, see, like right there, like when you're moving the disc around, you might misplace it. I think it's literally in my DVD drive, so I'll check it later. But the main thing that happens is sometimes people will have trouble with this little mechanism here. This one was actually really nice. This one, you actually put pressure in the middle and it comes right out. But I've had DVDs or Blu-rays that were super stubborn, and I feel like I was going to crack the disc trying to fight that mechanism. So anyway, what I do is I copy or back it up to my computer, and then I, just keep that on a shelf. I keep it as a hard copy backup, so if the digital copy gets lost, something goes wrong, I still have this. Now, if people were bootlegging or downloading the movie, they would use a lower bitrate or a lower quality setting. And in both video encoders, you have a constant quality or a constant rate factor, which is abbreviated RF or CRF. And basically what you need to know is when you're converting a Blu-ray movie, you're going to have a very large file. Like with this one here, Turn A Gundam, it's 5 gigabytes per 24-minute episode or 25-minute episode. With Galaxy Express 3.9, it's a little tricky because they put a dozen episodes into like a single 40 gig file. So what I have to do with Galaxy Express is basically use chapters. Because if this was a normal DVD movie like Austin Powers, you would have chapter 1 through, let's say, chapter 20. And that would be the whole movie, basically. And let's say you said you don't want to have, let's say, the ending credits. So let's say chapter 1 was irrelevant. You can skip it. Or maybe you want to make a video clip containing chapters, 6 through 7, you can do something like that. But when doing Galaxy Express, every episode is comprised of 5 chapters. So I have to do chapter 1 through 5, and then put in my settings and add it to a queue. Now I can just hit start, and it'll do one, video, but that's tedious. It's going to do basically chapters 1 through 5. Then you got to do chapters 6 through 10, one at a time. So it's nice to have a queue, and you can see I already have 2 items in the queue. But we're going to just kind of rinse and repeat. So we're going to do chapters 6 through 10, which would be the second episode on this particular disc. Now, for picking the video quality, we could pick constant quality. And I should make note, I'm not currently actively reading the chat. I should probably take a quick look, but want to do this as a quick video because dinner is on the way, and I want to use a format that is conducive. And of course, whenever I start a stream on Restream, I always have to click on a button that allows the chat to work. So apparently I didn't even have the chat up and running just now. So there's that. But getting back on topic, now that we do have the chat up and running, when you make a re-encode of a DVD of a TV show, a cartoon, an episode, we're going from basically like 5 gigs for 25 minutes, and we want to get that down to something reasonable. Now, if you were like someone sharing bootleg movies on a torrent site, which I highly discourage, or if you were downloading it from someone who put it on a torrent site, more accurate, right? The file would be like very small, like maybe 200-300 megabytes for like the half hour. And generally speaking, when someone's sharing some bootleg thing with people who aren't paying for it, they're willing to make compromises, and the person downloading it is also willing to make compromises. Certainly, if it's some content that I don't plan on watching more than once, I'm willing to make compromises. But the whole reason I buy physical media is so I can have the, best quality, better quality than I can get on Netflix. And theoretically, Netflix can deliver good quality, but it will make compromises when conditions require it, when conditions necessitate lowering the quality. For example, when they first rolled out 4K, sure, they had 4K resolution for the streaming, and I want to say hi to Spock in the chat. That's Spock's Friday Nights on YouTube, and I believe he also has a Rumble channel. So if he has a Rumble channel, we'll put a link out. But yeah, so anyway, as I was saying, the video quality. So you have 2 ways to do that. You could do your bit rate, which is right down here, average bit rate, and you got different modes like 2-pass encoding and turbo first pass. But basically, you put a number here. And in the days of old, it was as simple as putting in a number that would be, striking a balance. Maybe you do a little trial and error, and you find that if you make it lower than a certain number, the quality is unbearable. And if you make it higher than a certain number, the file size is, once again, unbearable. So we, could do that. But nowadays we have another method, and this one is a constant quality or constant rate factor. And this is nice because throughout a movie, you're going to have scenes, or throughout a cartoon or something, TV show, you're going to have scenes that are less demanding, that don't require a high bit rate. And so, you can basically generate a variable bit rate file. But to do that, you still have to give it like some number that it can work with in order for it to, make a decision on what bit rate to use at any given instant. And so generally speaking, the bottom line is the lower this number is, which oddly enough, moving to the right gives you a lower number, moving to the left gives you a higher number. And in fact, I do have a preset in here, so I can actually double click on the preset that already has the settings. And if you float your mouse over it, it gives you a tool tip, or this little floating dialog, where it tells you exactly what this does. It tells you that suggested values are between 18 and 20 for standard definition content, and 20 to 23 for high definition sources. So basically, if you go below a 20 when dealing with high definition content, you're just going to make the file size obscenely large for no good reason, with no benefit. And if you're dealing with standard definition and you go below 18, once again, you're going to make the file size obscenely large with no apparent benefit. But generally, you can get away with cranking it up to a 20 when dealing with standard definition, and you can bring it up to 23 when dealing with high definition. But once you go above 23, you're going to see more compression artifacts. You're going to see more signs that this was a video that was re-encoded and compressed. But generally, you can usually hit the sweet spot at 22. Now, with this particular cartoon, Galaxy Express 39, it is not standard definition. It is high definition because it's a 1080p scan from the film negatives or from the animation cells. This is a 1080p. Its resolution is 1440 by 1080 right now in this particular image square. There is also an option sometimes to crop it, because in fact this was originally 1920 by 1080, so it was actually widescreen 1080p. But the way they ship a lot of Blu-ray content is they put pillar box or black bars on the left and right side of the screen, and I think they do that just to ensure that people's TVs don't accidentally stretch the image to make it fit on screen. Generally this is a non-issue for me, so I'm doing it like this, and as you can see, it fits perfectly in a square. If YouTube's quality or Rumble is permitting, you would also see a lot of film grain in here. You can see like this dancing noise pattern, and we can put it in an A/B repeat pattern or mode. We could actually do. Hey, what? That's weird. It actually kind of just glitched out on me there. We'll try it again. So we're gonna try pressing this button. There we go. So you can see, like, aside from the girl turning her head, you can see like a dancing noise pattern. You might have to manually crank your quality up to 1080p, but on YouTube, but it's there. Now, some people might argue, did the director intend for it to have film grain in it? Well, generally I want to preserve it, and there is an opportunity where you can actually reduce the file size further by eliminating the grain, but I'm not going to touch on that right now. But bottom line is that, yeah, you can have these natural imperfections. And so essentially, from what I can figure, by making it available at 1080p vertical resolution, 1080 lines or 1080 pixels of vertical resolution, you can get to see every bit of film grain. But also, if you want to upsample it, if you want to upscale it, or any number of things, you're giving yourself the best chance to see every detail, such as the lines on Tetsuro's fingernail right here. You get all of that detail without any loss. But sometimes you could re-encode this to 480p and watch it, and you wouldn't even bat an eyelash. My entire Macross 7 set is in 480p right now, and it looks fine. Sure, I'd love to see it in higher definition, but it actually looks fine. So anyway, bottom line here is how we're going to do it. If we're re-encoding or encoding a Blu-ray movie and we want to make it into a manageable file size for our personal digital storage, our digital library. For the video settings, I typically will use a constant quality setting of 22. I pick 10-bit color unless the video can't benefit from 10-bit color. I do also pick the H.265 or X.265 video codec as opposed to H.264. And generally, this will give you better compression, potentially better quality, but H.264 will ensure better compatibility or wider compatibility. So you can make a choice on that. You may prefer the X.264 option, but in my case, I'm using a media server like Emby. Some people use Plex, which it's not really my preference at all, but it works the same way basically for the most part. And both of those media server applications can transcode. So if I'm playing this back on a TV or device or a Roku stick that does not support this level of quality, or I'm sorry, this particular codec, the 265, then Emby or Plex will happily, transcode it. It'll basically encode it, re-encode it as you're watching it. And speaking of that, when I'm using, Emby, it will transcode using the NVIDIA encoder, NVENC, as you see here. But that one we don't use, even though it's very fast. Like if I want to re-encode an episode of this cartoon right now, yeah, I'll get very good speed on it. But generally, you're going to get, if you want to get the same quality, essentially, if I want to get the same quality as I get with the CPU-based video encoder, because basically both H.265 or X.265 and H.264/X.264, both of them are CPU-based video encoders, whereas anything with NVENC in the name or NVIDIA encoder is GPU-based encoding. And so if I go into hybrid, for example, and I tell it to start encoding right now, you're going to see my CPU meter jump. And you can see right here, we'll update a little faster, even though I don't like to put it in high speed. But now you can see like the graph is running at like basically 100% CPU load, as opposed to like, you know, what it was idling at, or, you know, operating at just now. Meanwhile, you'll see my video encoding bar over here is about 44% because I'm using OBS right now. My video encoding settings in OBS tell it to use the NVIDIA encoder. And I do that because if I didn't, every time I used OBS to record or stream, it would use resources from my CPU. And if I'm doing a video encoder demonstration like I just did now, that would not be helpful. That would be counterproductive to this exact scenario. But beyond that, of course, we want the CPU available to other things. It should be noted that the part in the graphics board or the GPU that does the video encoding is separate from the part that does gaming, generally speaking. And so most of your gaming stuff will happen in the 3D and, of course, video memory. And so you're not really going to affect your gameplay by using the NVIDIA encoder. And that's one of the reasons why it's so advantageous to use when streaming games. But if I'm doing it with like a cartoon, you know, just for video encoding, I'm converting it from a large file to a small file. The problem with the GPU-based video encoder is that to get the same quality as I would get with these settings on the, you know, CPU-based encoder, I have to pick a higher quality setting. And basically, to get the same quality, the GPU-based video encoded file will always be larger than a file encoded using CPU-based encoding. Now, considering that we have that inefficiency, why am I using it for streaming? Well, for streaming, the internet connection can handle the upstream. YouTube is happy to handle receiving that video, you know, format. And so it just works out better that way. And I can get lower latency between me and the chat, so that when I say something and I see a message in the chat, the latency is low. So it works out well for that purpose. But for things that you're archiving, things you're storing in your library, I would not use NVIDIA encoder, except let's say I wanted to like put a video onto StreamYard and I wanted to share it on a live stream like right now. So let's say, for example, in fact, let's do like a video clip. Let's do chapter 6. We're going to do the opening to Galaxy Express 3.9. And it could be chapter 1 or chapter 6. It doesn't really matter. But we're going to just say OP. And we're going to just put the number there. And we're going to put the NVIDIA encoder. And so we're going to pick NVIDIA encoder, quality factor 22. I always keep the same frame rate as the source. Now, normally this setting here would affect the file size and quality, but generally it shouldn't make a big difference with NVIDIA encoder. So we're going to just put it on high performance for now. Audio. Now, this is using the Essentially PCM, which is similar to WAV file, right? It's an uncompressed audio track. It comes out to about like 300 megabytes for the entire half-hour episode. And so I typically bring it into FLAC because FLAC gets me like 80 megabytes instead of, the audio track becomes 80 megabytes instead of 300. If you use the popular format, which is AAC at 160K per second, you get like a 45 megabyte audio track. So bottom line, since we're just testing the video encoding speed of NVIDIA encoder, we're going to tell it to use pass-through. And what that does is it's going to literally copy the audio track. It's not going to convert it at all. We're also going to just do without subtitles on this one. Actually, I'm going to keep them. No way, it's a hard decision there. Yeah, we're going to keep them. And chapter markers, it's actually listing the entire 67 chapters, but obviously we're only going to be doing chapter 6, which is 1 minute and 20 seconds. And you know, we can do something with subtitles actually. You have the option to pick forced or burned in. Now, burned in subtitles is basically meaning that it gets baked in. So if I leave burned in off, it's gonna give me the option to turn the subtitles on or off. But the minute I click burned in, it takes a little more effort on the computer's part, but it's gonna basically bake the subtitles into the video so that now they can't be turned off. And there are times where, you know, if I'm sharing a video on StreamYard, if I want the subtitles to be included, then I'm going to want to use burned in subtitles if I want, that to be read, because you can't use, videos on StreamYard, videos on, in certain other venues don't allow you to turn the subtitles on and off at will like a DVD or Blu-ray player would. So, you choose that depending on your circumstance. We're not using any video filters, but sometimes you might use a denoise or a degrain filter if that helps you get a smaller file, or it gets you a better look, something you like more. I, once again, don't really care. We're sticking with MKV because that is just the format I'm choosing for this, So let's go ahead and we can either hit start right now, but instead we're going to add it to the queue, and we're going to put it at the top of the queue. We're not going to do these two files. We're just going to do this one here. So remember, this is the opening to the show, and now it's running. CPU is being used because it still requires some CPU power to do what it's doing, but it's not going to run at 100% consistently. It does seem to be bobbing up and down though, which is interesting, but mainly you're seeing the action happening here on the NVIDIA graph. Now, I find it kind of weird that the video encoding on the GPU went down a little bit, but, either way, I suspect any minute now, you're going to see this graph drop. It's probably doing some initial task. Maybe it's handling the subtitles. Some video encoding utilities will give you a breakdown of what they're doing. So, for example, in Hybrid, it tells you extracting audio, which it did already, encoding the video, which is like the bulk of what work it has to do, and then some generic stuff, deleting temp files, but sometimes it'll give you more information depending. It's going to be like really verbose sometimes, like generating chapters or merging the video, but this program is a bit more verbose about telling you what it's doing. In Handbrake, we can look at the statistics after it's done. We can look at the log. One annoying thing about Handbrake is it does not let you keep the finished items. So once it finishes something in the queue, oh, it finished already. Okay, so that file encoded so quickly that I didn't even notice that it started the next file, if that makes sense. And so when it started the next file, my CPU did go to 100%. My fan did get louder because the CPU fan will get louder when it's being run at full load. But let's see if we can find out how long it really took. So we got the item selected. It took 16 seconds. It took 16 seconds to encode a 1-minute video. And if we look, we should be able to get the frame rate. And we can do that by either going into the log folder. Yeah, Handbrake has a folder or directory where it stores logs. And you can see we have a text file that corresponds to this. And it may be more readable in a black screen, but we're going to just roll with this right now. So we're going to look for, if it tells us, because it says 24 frames a second is what the video was. But I want to know what frame rate the video encoder operated at, because it happened so darn quickly I missed it. Well, let's do it again. How about that? So we're going to reset that job. And we're going to hit start. And we're going to read the bottom of the screen here. It's going to tell us, it's going to say down here. No, it's happening so lightning fast. Oh, 210 frames a second. Okay, so 210 frames a second isn't wildly fast, but we're doing it over the network right now. We're doing it at 1080p. And, well, it did the video in a quarter of the time it would take to play back. The next one is using CPU-based encoding. And so this one is actually running at a paltry 8 frames a second. Let's see if we can find out why, because that is a bit slower than what I would tolerate. So we're going to tell Handbrake to bring this into the box, because if you go to the queue and you click edit, it'll actually show you the settings that you set. So I picked very slow. So this was part of an experiment. And I'd say the answer to this experiment is no. But basically that was interesting. We're going to go do this file here. And same thing here. We picked slow. So we're going to crank up the speed. So once again, we're going back to a CPU-based encoder. And this affects that speed. Now, essentially what the instructions will tell you is that you should pick the slowest setting that you're willing to tolerate. But if you pick a setting that's too slow, you'll take way longer to convert the file with little benefit. Basically, the slower it does it, the slower the preset, the better your quality should be, or the better the quality. But this is not a hard and fast rule. It literally says you should generally set this option to the slowest option because slower settings will result in better quality or smaller files. For now, we're going to just put it in the middle. We're going to add this back to the queue, and we're going to tell it to run, and we're going to see if we can get like a idea of the frame rate. With standard definition content, 300 frames a second or something near standard definition, 300 frames a second is pretty common. This one we're looking at 35 frames a second, which is a little bit better than real time. This is a 24 frames a second cartoon. So 35 frames a second means that it'll still do that 25-minute cartoon in 16 minutes. So, okay, that's cool. So that's how we handle Blu-ray and Handbrake. And in this particular one, I used a FLAC audio codec, which of course, you know, is going to make a larger audio track. Most people will want to use AAC. Now, we're going to go real quick to hybrid because this one here, I had some big ass files that needed to be done. But what I want to do is I want to go and connect to my network, and I want to go into my VHS folder. So in this folder, we have my VHSs. And today I ripped a VHS, in fact, this isn't even a VHS. This is a DVD about nuclear bombs, a nuclear bomb documentary narrated by William Shatner. I should probably run that through the video encoder before I visit my friend's house tonight. Maybe, you know, he'll enjoy that. But this is something called industrial television. It's a wild show from the local public access station that used to be shown in the late 90s and early 2000s. And we're just going to, you know, output it to a directory. It doesn't really matter where it goes right now, I don't think. Just need to get it out there. You know, we're just going to go here. And we're going to call it, we're going to make a new folder. We're going to call it 6/2023, and for some reason when I click on a new folder icon it just brings it to the bottom. So anyway, vid new 6/2023. All right, whatever, sort that out later. And that's the thing, and we're gonna call this deinterlaced, because really that's the most important thing to me is deinterlacing. We're going to use an MKV format, yes. So once again, we want to make sure it's an MKV. Same file name, just that I'm reading it off a network drive and we're sending it to a local drive. We can use X265 or X264. Either one of these will be CPU based. And of course, like I said, we can do it faster using NVIDIA encoder, but we don't want to do that because, like I said, we're going to get either a larger file or lower quality. If you use NVIDIA encoder in hybrid, it lets you pick both 264 and 265, which I couldn't do in Handbrake, at least not the version I have. Audio, it says automatically add audio tracks. It also has a button for adding the subtitles. There are no subtitles in this, so we don't have to worry about that. Also for the audio, it's a PCM format. It's a WAV format audio track, but since it's a VHS tape, I'm going to just do AAC at 192 kilobits per second. You know, it's a little bit better than 160. I rather go a little higher. If I was streaming or uploading to YouTube, I should probably do 160. Okay, I'm going to do 160 for now. because it's necessary to do it at 160. So, at least if I upload it to like one of these platforms. AAC 160K. There we go. And I can do two of them. So anyway, bottom line, we need to do H265. We're going to pick a quality setting of 20, but we could do 18 if we want. In fact, we could, you know, I like to put all of that information into the file name so that I can troubleshoot things if something goes wrong. So we're going to do RF20, and everything is good. We don't really need to put any... Oh, we need one more parameter. This is the most important thing. This is the whole reason why I use this. Like, look, we can use Handbrake because it's more user-friendly. And if I was doing a VHS, I would have to use the deinterlacing filter. But I'm not crazy about the deinterlacing filter options and handbrake. I find that in order to test them all out, it's super time consuming, and I'm not even sure if it's as good as it gets or as good as it can get. This, on the other hand, uses QTGMC Vapor Synth, and this one is a very good, apparently, deinterlacing tool set. So bottom line is, you could do a custom setup here, but generally if I do that, I'm going to accidentally make it take prohibitively long. But according to some guy on a forum, he says that you should pick the very slow preset, which is a step above placebo, and then you're good to go. And I find that, yes, this gives me good results. The only thing that gives me slightly better deinterlacing results is if I'm using the paid version of DaVinci Resolve, which has a AI machine learning trained model called the DaVinci Neural Engine, and it does certain things better when you're doing the neural engine deinterlace, and it does other things not better. Like, it's like, sometimes it does a better job, sometimes it doesn't. And maybe if I was supplying a better quality source, it'd be another story. But so far, I've only put DVDs through, VHS tapes through DaVinci, and so I don't have anything else to compare. But I could say that in a visual comparison, it looked like DaVinci did slightly better when looking at the ripples of water on a swimming pool on an old VHS tape from the 80s, while Hybrid seemed to do just about as good. And everything else in the video, I couldn't discern any difference. I struggled to discern any difference in quality. So bottom line is, yeah, we're going to do that. And lastly, this is Bob. Bob will give you 60 frames a second. I'm not going to get into the science of it, but basically, unchecking this checkbox will give you the original 29.97 frames a second. And checking this checkbox will give you 60 frames a second. Since we live in the 21st century, I'm going to go with the 60 frames a second. And we're going to just hit the plus sign. Now it adds that job to the queue. And if we want to do a little experimentation. We could say, give me a lower factor. Remember, lower factor means it'll actually be a higher quality. So we're going to do RF18. All of the other settings will remain. And then we're going to do 264 codec. Now, as you can see, by default, it's got a bitrate setting, and it's got a lot of ways to do bit rates. We're going to go down here, pick rate factor, and there's also constant quantizer. But either way, both rate factor and constant quantizer, the lower the number, the better your quality. I'm going to go and stick with the number 20 for that one. And so with this one, I have to remember that this is 264. In fact, I should have labeled the other one as 265s, but it doesn't really matter. So anyway, there we have it. Now what? Add it to the queue. Go down here, and we can tell it to start. And we can tell it to start in any particular order, but we're going to just hit the play button on top of the one we want to do. Now, I have already had other jobs in the queue that are paused, so it's going to say there's 3 parallel jobs, but it's not actually running them simultaneously. That would make all of them, underperform. My biggest issue is I've been having some weird time issues, so I'm very curious to see if this underperforms. But I believe with the lower resolution and quality of VHS, when this progress bar updates, it should give us a reasonable time estimate. For Galaxy Express 39, once again, we go back and just do a normal episode, chapter 6 through 10. No filters necessary. Constant quality factor 22. In fact, we already did this, I think. So if I go and I tell it, go to the destination directory, you're going to see I have some stuff here. It takes a second to populate because it's looking for metadata. One thing I learned was if you tell Windows to show you the length of a video file right here, like how long the video is, like if it's an episode, it'll take considerably longer for the folder to load. So I may disable that column. I thought it would be cool to have a column telling me how many minutes something is, but in practice, it seems not to be helpful. So once again, 5 gig episodes are now down to 986 megabytes using a rate factor of 23. When the higher the number, the lower the quality is. Using a rate factor of 22, depending on whether I did it at slow or slower, well, it got as high as 1.3 gigs, which is crazy high. Generally, I'm willing to, at this point, settle at about 1 gig because animation seems to be a little tricky to get compression on. And on top of that, you know, anything less, I'm worried I'll lose quality. Now, I may tolerate a lower setting because one thing I noticed was I thought that this thing was overdoing the compression and that it was looking bad, but then I realized the original source material on the Blu-ray looked the same. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, these do the trick. You got your train, and I remember at one point I was using certain settings with the other video encoder instead of Handbrake with hybrid, where this part would skip. And one of the reasons why I'm not using hybrid for this particular Blu-ray right now is because I was running into a weird issue where it would do jagged playback at the very beginning for no good reason, and it would do like the 24-minute show would be fine. Then after the 24 minutes ends, it would say there's an extra 2 hours, but it would be blank. And if you go and skip past 24 minutes, it would be over. It would just end automatically. But it was just like a weird glitch that I found inconvenient to deal with. So if I didn't get any benefit from hybrid in this particular case, I decided to stick with Handbrake. Hybrid, however, could be useful if you did want to degrain it or denoise it, you know, get rid of that graininess. So yeah, that's basically what we're doing with the video encoders. What I didn't go over was OBS audio filters, but briefly I'll touch upon it. In short, this is my microphone. And if we right click on it, you see I have a plethora of filters, but only 2 of them are enabled. And essentially, this one is actually the one that's better suited for air conditioning. So right now, if we listen to the air conditioner, you could probably only register that sound on headphones if you put up the volume. Now, notice it's below negative 50 dB with the expander that I created for air conditioning. But when I switch to the other one, you're going to see this 50, it's going to go above negative 50. See, so I do have a preset that brings the idle sound levels down to where the mouse pointer is. Whereas right now, it's at negative 45 instead of negative 50, negative 45 being a higher number. If I fan only is considerably lower. Now, what would happen if... Now, I can't turn on the air conditioner compressor anymore, but what would happen if I didn't have any filter? So, this is with the expander filter on and the fan running at full power. And that's with the expander off. So bottom line is, yeah, for air conditioning season, I would say that the compressor and expander filters could be your best friend, because people are going to be running fans or air conditioners during the summertime and streaming in that situation. Also, for example, a friend on YouTube, the Nordporeal Lifeform, I remember last summer his laptop fan would get loud. I didn't really notice it, but he noticed it, and then I noticed it when he pointed it out. But yeah, you know, the laptop fan was getting loud because laptops will, you know, get louder as the heat buildup gets higher. The fan will compensate by running at a higher RPM, and so, you know, that was something that I used to address by using the more complex plugin, the VST plugin, which is a great plugin, but it's not necessary. It's got its uses, but it's not absolutely necessary. Sometimes it's easier to set this up in a pinch, but these here are pretty well understood by most of the internet, and I find using them in concert, using them together, like, I don't know if there's even, I think there might be one YouTube video where it talks about using both of these together, and I stumbled into a tutorial talking about these together. But if I went to do a random search right now, I generally can't find a tutorial covering these being used together. But I find this compressor makes it so that my voice is a little bit louder. It normalizes my audio levels, prevents me from being too loud by preventing me from going into the red zone, but also keeping me in the yellow zone. So I don't go below the yellow zone when I'm speaking, even if I talk lower. And I also don't go into the red zone when I'm outbursting, or at least not far into it. Like without the compressor, if I made a loud sound, it would bottom out. It would go to the very top. Well, the expander, unlike compressor, the expander's job is to suppress the low-level background noise. And, you know, in my case, my desktop computer's fans get louder when the ambient temperature is higher, or when the computer is working hard. Like if I was playing a game right now, or as I'm literally doing right now, I'm running a video encoder right now. So, you know, on my main screen, you can see the video encoder is running. And if the CPU is at 100% at nearly 5 gigahertz, which is like, you know, it means the turbo boost has been engaged. It's a 3.6 gigahertz running at 5. So, or 4.6, 4.7. So, you know, that's going to translate into heat and higher fan RPMs and more noise. So, yeah, that was the quick primer on the audio filters. I may return before going out, but I'm going to go and have dinner right now. So with that being said, I want to thank you for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave a comment. Please like and subscribe. And for now, we shall end transmission as soon as I hit that button, which always takes a few seconds. I'm going to get an outro going at some point, because I believe an outro is, you know, an ending video clip is the way to go. Maybe I'll do end transmission, a video clip, because I don't think Rumble and YouTube end exactly in sync. So it's quite possible that I will get cut off mid-sentence. And so, once again, I'll say the tagline, but it may not be heard on both platforms. So with that being said, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you have any questions or comments, and we shall now end transmission.